Hello, and welcome to The Spartan Atheist. I am your host, The Spartan Atheist, and today we're going to talk about relationships. What fun! In the fall of 2012, Monty Teo was a college football player at Notre Dame. His girlfriend of about a year and a half, one Lene Kekua, had just died of leukemia, leaving the player emotional and with an interesting enough story to be highlighted following a cathartic game against Michigan State, where he recorded an impressive 12 tackles. His girlfriend died just a week after his grandmother, and he fought back the tears. The two had met with a tweet the previous year and endured a year-long distance relationship as Lene was a student at Stanford. Hospitalized for a car crash, Lene was soon diagnosed with leukemia and endured painful treatments. Monty was constantly in her support. Her passing was a blow. She had seemed to be improving following a bone marrow transplant. The only problem was Lene Kekua never existed. She was made up, and Monty was the victim of an elaborate prank. Like everyone else that heard this story, I asked myself the day the story broke, how in the hell can a college student be tricked into believing he had a girlfriend for a year and a half? Who in the hell can be convinced that they are in a relationship when the other person is completely made up? Turns out, about 250 million of my fellow Americans. 250 million of my fellow Americans claim to be in a relationship with someone that they know less than Monty knew his girlfriend. At least when Monty texted, somebody responded. With God, you pray for shit knowing damn well that the chances of getting a reply are zilch. Seriously, how stupid can people be? You have never met, spoke with, communicated with, seen, or heard your God. Ever. That's not a relationship. Do you know who had a personal relationship with God? Abraham. Yeah, that Abraham. Old school Testament, Abraham. God would go walking around sometimes to check things out, and he'd wander by Abraham's tent and say, "Hey, let's go for a walk, bro." And Abraham would say, "Yeah, bro, what's up?" And God would say, "I'm going to make you a fucking legend. I mean a rich cat. Everybody's going to know you. You're going to be tapping all that ass. All you got to do is this one thing." "Yeah, bro, that's awesome. What you want?" "You and your homies and your brats got to chop off the end of your dicks." And then Abraham just did it because God actually delivered on his promises back then. Moses got to hang out with God a bunch of times. One time, Moses had a chat with God about what to do to save all the Jews, and then a little later, with no provocation, God was just going to kill Moses. No reason. God is psychopathic like that. But lucky for God, Zipporah saw God stomping over to kill Moses, so super quick like she chopped the end of their son's dick off and threw it at God's feet, which made God stop long enough to remember that he had chosen Moses to lead a whole bunch of genocide later. So he decided Moses was cool, what with a bloody foreskin at his feet and all, and he took off. Think about that story directly from the Bible. Both Moses and his wife Zipporah literally saw a figure walking towards Moses, a figure that they recognized as their God, as a real being, and then threw an object at the feet of the figure. In a court of law, we could use this to establish all sorts of physical characteristics of the scene, including how far away from each other they were, the facial expressions of God, what God was wearing, what he smelled like. Did he seem disgusted or satisfied, or was he calm? You know, like you can when you have an actual relationship with someone. The difference between the fake relationship Christians have and the fake relationship Monty Teo had is Monty had someone responding in a legitimate communication form. Monty can be criticized for believing he had a girlfriend that he never actually met, But at least when he threw out a "what you up to," there was a legitimate communication response. And let's think about this a second. What is a legitimate communication form? One you can understand. If someone speaks to you in a language you don't understand, that's not communication. They're trying to communicate, but communication is not happening. Communication is when someone transmits an idea to someone else and the other person receives it. If the message is muddled, it's poor communication. And if the message is indistinguishable from nothing at all, you are definitely not communicating. Prayer is not communication. I would say it is the same thing as throwing a bunch of sand on the floor and trying to find a message, but it's actually worse than that. Prayer is like throwing a bunch of sand on the floor and then thinking about what you hope is written in the sand and then literally writing it in the sand yourself. That's not communicating. That's thinking out loud. Thinking out loud is not communicating with someone. Now, the Christians will tell you that there's some sort of undefined, unknowable method by which God somehow magic goo drops stuff in their head. They don't know how, they don't know why, they don't know the mechanism, and they have no idea how to measure it if it even happens. But that's their claim. Well, how can we figure out if it's real? By testing, of course. Just ask 50 people that claim to get magic goo, God goo downloads, how we should deal with gay people. And we get 50 different answers. You know, exactly the same result as if they were all just making shit up in their heads. And don't fucking tell me that God can't be tested. The Bible details people testing God. Gideon, for example, asked God to prove that he had his back and demanded a test for God to pass. And he even dictated the test, a test which clearly violated the laws of physics. His test was to lay a rug outside at night 2 nights in a row. On the first night, Gideon told God to get the rug wet, but leave the ground dry. The next night, Gideon asked God to leave the rug dry, but get the ground wet. God obliged both times. Gideon tested God. Gideon got a positive result. We build trust in relationships when people deliver on their promises. When they consistently deliver, you can increasingly believe that they will deliver the next time. Now, everyone has a different level of how quickly they will trust someone or what they will consider a breach of that trust. But if you can't explain that trust, you don't have a relationship. Someone sometimes may vouch for another person that you've never met. This is done so that someone you trust is sort of passing along their trust to you in a trust chain. You trust that person, and that person trusts the third person, so you should trust the third person. But religion isn't a trust chain. It's a trust circle jerk, with each person telling the person behind them to trust, and that message just goes around and around without anyone actually interacting with the God. They tell the person behind them to trust because the person in front told them to do so, who said so because the person in front of them said it, who heard it from the person in front of them, and the next person, and so on until it just gets back to you. This is not about trust. It is a feedback loop. And as a result of that feedback loop, they all trust their magic God goo is telling them the right answer. Only he's given everybody a different answer. There's over 30,000 denominations of Christianity. You may or may not have noticed, but people have gone to war and sometimes killed lots of people because other people were Catholics and the other were Protestant. Or they were Christians versus Muslim. Or Mormons versus Quakers. If God is communicating to you, he's intentionally playing you as a pawn in a game. He's telling each side that they're right and in a deadly game, sitting back and laughing. What a fucking dick. In fact, this sounds like an abusive relationship. But is it an abusive relationship? Well, let's find out. According to ActiveBeat.com and the article Telling Signs You Are Trapped in an Abusive Relationship, the following 10 things are signs you are in an abusive relationship. 1. Humiliation. 2. Verbal insults. 3. Physical violence. 4. Controlling behavior. 5. Unpredictable mood swings. 6. Picking at all your faults. 7. Alienating you from friends or family. 8. Placement of blame. It's always your fault. 9. Manipulation. And 10. Calculated outbursts. Let's keep these signs of an abusive relationship up for a while I give you a quick history of the Bible. Yahweh creates the world and is super into interacting with his people. He walks around and talks with them all the time. He gives them rules and tells them to do stuff. But since he forgot to give them brains, they screw up and they're bad. Luckily, being bad gave them brains. Unluckily, God is super pissed and kicks them out of paradise and punishes them and their children and their grandchildren and all their descendants ever for stupidly telling no-brained people to follow rules he arbitrarily made up. Anyway, then he gets a bit too big-headed for his britches and he begins to level up his propaganda game. After a while, he only talks to people in mist on mountains, and he starts telling them that they can't look at him or say his name. They have to bow and make all sorts of tablecloths with purple trim and shit exactly like he says, or he gets super pissed. Anybody that doesn't kiss his ass in just the right way gets beat up or killed. But he still exchanges documents with people and provides all sorts of magic help to get the people around and, kick the heathen's ass. But then I guess God gets bored. He's off who knows where for 3, maybe 4 generations, just forgetting that he has people that are supposedly kissing his ass. And then he drops in for a bit, not in person, but just as a booming voice from above. Gets totally pissed off about some dumb thing, like a rock pile that's been on the edge of town for like 300 years now that wasn't taken down according to his instructions to their great-great-great-grandparents. So he kills them, installs new leaders, and then just disappears for another 100 years or so. And don't dare be married to a woman from another tribe when he comes around either. He has strict rules about who you can fuck and who you should kill. Anybody that doesn't like him, definitely on the kill list. Anyway, this goes on for about 1,000 years, when all of a sudden some kid comes walking in. A real, flesh and blood dude being nice. And this guy claims to be Yahweh, but he's gotten clean and sober now. Basically, everyone tells him to fuck off because everyone knows God is just a big drunk asshole that just swings in to kill people. But the kid insists that he's a changed man. After all, it was the human's fault he was always so pissed. But anyway, he's been working with a therapist, and he's going to try to do better. He's turned over a new leaf, and he's decided not to just kill people every few generations anymore, but to actually try and work with people again. Oh, and he also calls everybody in charge, priests and governors alike, total assholes that shouldn't be followed. So naturally, this lands him in some hot water, and when the priests do what all religious people do, as God commanded them to do, and they kill the prick that they see as a false prophet, the new kid gets all bent. He comes back to life after being dead just to show his buddies he wasn't lying, tells everyone they can go fuck themselves, and then he just bolts. Apparently, every now and then he just kills a lot of people because they were gay or didn't kiss his ass enough or they watched too much sports or something. The message is that it's humans' fault for literally every one of his feelings. But, at least the Old Testament God would pop in every century or so. This new guy's been gone for 2 millennia. Honestly, he's probably dead from alcohol poisoning in a gutter somewhere. Of course, I don't believe in Yahweh or Jesus, but Bible God clearly is an abusive asshat. But I don't think that his followers are any better. I see the following behavior by Christians all the time. And again, I'll leave the list of abusive relationship traits up for reference. Telling children they were born sinners. Catholic calisthenics. The Nicene Creed. Making entire videos about the end of the world and making sure you're prepared right now because otherwise you'll go to hell. Telling you to stay out of relationships with people of other faiths. Telling people tornadoes, hurricanes, and earthquakes are punishment for disobeying God. Telling people bad shit in their life is a test to see if they still love Jesus. passionate preaching instead of logical discourse. This might be low-hanging fruit, but prosperity gospel preachers that manipulate people by telling them God will help them if you send money. Not low-hanging fruit, preachers that every time someone faces a huge loss are always there to reinforce the lie. Help a little, lie a lot. Abusing people when they're most vulnerable. And then, of course, there's this Bible passage. Do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies will be the members of his own household. Anyone who loves their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves their son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Whoever does not take up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. Cheery book. Religion simply is abuse, so much so that those raised believing that being abused and ignored is what it is to be in a relationship. It's sad. Do you know what the best part about being an atheist is? And I didn't even realize this until I left the religion, because you're just so programmed. I love that I'm not in some abusive relationship with a God or my community anymore. People that leave religion have the same feeling and perspective as people that escaped abusive personal relationships. That speaks volumes for the horrible way that faith treats the flock. And yeah, for every gay conversion camp that beats kids, there are nice families that go to church and don't get yelled at. But they are still being manipulated. I've never told my own parents that I'm an atheist. I do this because I know that they've been brainwashed into thinking atheists will go to hell, a place they actually believe in, and I don't want them to go through that emotional turmoil. This consideration alone makes me a better person than their God, who will flippantly announce all sorts of people that will go to hell and cause families to be ripped apart as a result. Luckily, there is absolutely zero evidence for the existence of Bible God. And in fact, we know conclusively that many of the things attributed to Bible God were not of his doing. Christians, your God has either abandoned you or is fake. There is your relationship.